interviews, celebrities, politics, alt comedy. Doug dislikes or is generally disinterested in podcasts about each of these subjects. Here's our theme song.
Doug's just a normal guy, still has his own, but he doesn't know why. Now the writing's on the wall. It's time he left the past, gonna listen to his first podcast. We know he's gonna have a ball. Interview celebrities, politics and all comedy. We'll make him listen to it all. Now here's Doug.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Potterverse, welcome once again to another episode of Making Doug Listen to Podcasts, the podcast that's part podcast review and part long-term experiment where we force my brother-in-law Doug to listen to a new podcast every week and then force him to talk about it here with us for you. As always, I'm joined by my fearless, my intrepid co-host.
It's Brandon.
It is indeed. And of course, it wouldn't be Making Doug Listen to Podcasts. It would just be Brandon and I talking to each other, which it often is, if it wasn't for this guy.
What's up, fellas?
Hey, John, are you okay?
Yes.
Two intros now that you've been pretty kind of sad about.
Well,
do I make you sad? Maybe it's me. Am I making you sad?
You don't make me sad, Doug. I'm just disappointed.
Fair enough.
Mostly in you. Doug, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing excellent.
Fantastic. Brandon, how about you? Feeling
Yeah,
good?
things are good. Yeah, we're having fun. We popped some energy drinks. We got some brewskis around the table.
Yeah, we did
Everybody's
indeed. And I'm glad you're having fun. That's really what it's about. I'm told it's not about whether our listeners are enjoying it. It's just about whether we're having fun.
Here's the thing, is that if the listeners hear us having fun, they're going to want to have fun with us.
I totally agree. If we're having fun, they're having fun. Now, this week...
Only we had fun.
If only we did. Brandon, don't step on my transitions.
But it's Doug.
What, not having fun? Or
Yeah, I
what?
mean, you know.
Oh, God, no. Doug's having fun. But we've made that clear to
Everybody knows.
the listeners. Everybody knows how this all works by this point. This week, we are having fun, and Doug is maybe not having fun. By the way, this week, I'm going to say I'm being, somewhat down in the mouth opener and intro. But the truth is, it belies how I really feel, which is I think Doug really liked this week's podcast. But we don't know yet. And we're not going to know until we get to Doug. But before we do, let's talk about what we listened to.
Yes.
Anyone that was with us last week knows that pretty much on the fly because we forgot to prepare for the podcast.
Just calling audibles.
Right, calling audibles left and right. But that's good. I mean, it means it's of the moment. It's in the now.
Yes.
We're not,
because I was surprised by it.
Let's go to our notes. Exactly. We can still surprise ourselves.
It shocked me.
I think hey, as long as you can shock yourself, that's a good thing.
And full disclosure, you guys don't know this. I had eaten weed before we recorded last episode, and I was high as a kite.
I absolutely did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know either.
And I was sitting there, I was just out of my... And so John would every once in a while kick to me, and I'd be like, "Oh shit, I have to talk now."
Oh no, I remember when you just failed to be able to.
Yeah. I was spacing out
ask
hard.
me the questions. Now I'm going to ask you, Brandon, just for a minute to shut up. Doug, considering you have had a prohibition we've both maintained on any kind of excessive substance use immediately before show, how do you feel about that?
I got to say, I think if it truly affected the show, I would probably be bothered. We did just have a discussion before we started recording about that.
We did.
So I guess it's
because we want to be sharp. We want to give our listeners the absolute best possible experience. That's why.
Sure.
Yeah, and it was a mistake on now that on hindsight, and I won't be doing it again. I didn't expect it to hit me as hard as it did.
Right.
I ate the pot.
So and was that before you drove here?
No. And when I parked, I was like,
right there in the driveway.
Yeah, I was in the driveway.
Nice.
I was like, let's. I'm going to see what happens if I do it. And as it turns out, it just made me incapable of following along the way that I normally do, or jumping in the way that I usually do.
Sure.
Which maybe that's better. I don't know. We'll hear from the listeners.
Hard to
but
say.
I'm going to say no.
I've edited the last episode, and I don't know if this is a testament to your professionalism when it comes to podcasting or statement on your general level of competence and functionality.
Ineptitude?
I couldn't tell the difference. And I should say this to our listeners in West Virginia and other backward states that still criminalize marijuana. It's entirely legal here. So
yes.
This is no more shocking than you saying, I had a couple fingers of scotch before the show.
And I don't drink anymore, and so marijuana is a thing that I've turned to a little bit. And actually, it's funny because it actually has enhanced my enjoyment of food, which sort of leads into this week's podcast.
It does indeed. Brandon, that was a buttery smooth transition. Nice. So as Brandon has suggested, this week's podcast is, of course, food related. It has a gastronomic theme. We listen to Doughboys, the chain restaurant podcast, and we, of course, as always, listen to 2 episodes. We listen to Taco Bell 2 with John Gabris, which is a live episode. It was the 3rd live episode they've done, and KFC with Paul F. Tompkins. Now, before we get into these episodes, into Doughboys, into the hosts, Nick Wiger and Mike Mitchell, we always ask 2 questions that they need to know lead up. Brandon, just hit us. Let's do it.
Doug, where'd you listen to this podcast?
I listened to this podcast at work.
Fantastic. Were you working on a spreadsheet?
I was not working on a spreadsheet.
You know what's interesting, Doug? I have no fucking idea what you do for work.
I'm like Chandler Bing. You have no idea just what I do?
No idea. I know.
Doug, this is a perfect opportunity. Why don't you tell us and our listeners what you do for work? I know they're picturing you. You're an office guy. You've talked about the fact that
I was going to say you gave a great description of my break room.
Okay.
Last week.
My
paper bag lunch. So
right.
I'm just frothing to know.
Okay. Well, I guess that's all they need to know. It's a office of some sort. It has a lunchroom of some description, and Doug sometimes brings his own food.
Is Doug afraid of telling us what he does?
Yeah, Doug.
Are you a secret agent?
Great
question.
Well,
I would actually just say Doug hasn't told you because you don't give me a second to talk.
Oh, that's sad.
True.
Now, Doug, so let's go back to the question I asked earlier. Doug, do you want to tell our listeners what you do for a living?
Yeah, I am currently a wholesale insurance underwriter.
Okay.
Primarily focused on commercial lines.
All right. We probably should have given
what the fuck does that
a little
mean?
disclaimer before that for any of our folks who are driving or operating heavy machinery before Doug describes what he does for a living in any more detail. You might want to pull over and turn off the engine. Oh. So, Brandon, do you have questions about it? You're an everyman. You're saying you don't know what that is.
What I'm saying is that how does a podcast influence the way that you do work? Do you find that you're like... Are you at a computer where you're filling in documents? Are you calling people on the phone?
Well, Doug, you're not listening to the podcast we assign while working, right? Or are
sometimes.
You? Okay.
Not always, but sometimes.
And
in this
headphones?
Case, well, yes, with headphones.
Okay.
And in this case, especially with, let's see, which one? With Taco Bell.
Yes.
Which was, I believe, 7 days long. I had to break it up over the week.
Sure.
Because it was a long episode.
It is. It's over an hour, definitely.
It was not digested in one day.
Right. Unlike Taco Bell.
No. Exactly like Taco Bell. Also not digested in a single day.
Wait, so, but here's I guess my question now, because work is always the answer.
Yes.
Do you find that some podcasts make work easier or harder? Have you found over the course of listening to these podcasts?
I would say they do not affect work per se, but like as we mentioned on Song Exploder, hearing that Metallica song
Episode
in the background.
14, Song Exploder.
There you go. That one. It was kind of a nice contrast to what I normally listen to, which is usually just the radio. So it's and not for the most part anything like heavy rock. So that I found was kind of invigorating.
All right, question 2.
Yes, sir.
Did you have a hard time finding this podcast?
No, I think I listened to it on Stitcher.
Okay.
So just had to dig around and find the episodes because I don't believe are numbered. So I had to just
they numbered?
Through the list.
Well, again, this is that whole iPod or iTunes thing of reverse ordering them. So the most recent episode, it could be episode 267, is listed as 1.
Right.
And episode 1 is listed as 267.
Right. And I know
it's confusing.
On my app.
Well, I was going to say, though, this was on the fly, so you actually didn't give me episode numbers.
Right. Yeah, you just had to scroll
You're
through
right.
it.
We didn't. And, some podcasts really focus on what number the podcast is. I've also found, again, it's not helpful in a lot of them unless they include the number in the title of the podcast.
Right.
If it's just numbered by the service, it's often numbered in reverse order, so the numbers we gave you would be meaningless.
Although at this point, Doug, I feel like you should be good enough to be able to figure out where the podcasts are or how to find them.
Well, I've done so. I've done so every week.
No,
so,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm going to start removing information.
Well,
I'm actually,
I don't
at some
think
point
you should
in time,
do that.
Just going to think the podcast
Right,
at you, and you're just going to have to figure out what I'm thinking.
right. ASL.
Okay.
Yeah.
American Sign Language, that shit over to them.
Oh, no, I was thinking like ESP.
Yes.
Which is not ASL.
They're both a sequence of letters.
They're both
you're right on with
transferring
that.
information,
Yes.
not using your mouth.
That's true.
Boom!
Agreed.
Nailed it.
They're
You did.
non-oral communications. That is true. Now, Doug, fascinating stuff. I'm
Right.
sure right now our listeners are reeling from all the information they've just had to take in. Well, you had no problem finding them. You listened to them at work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember which is the first of the two? Did
I
you try
listened
to
to
listen to them in
KFC
chronological order? Okay, so you listened to them a bit out of order. That was August of 2017. Talk Bell's January of 2017. Doesn't matter. These are all kind
Right.
of standalone. Now, you said you listened to KFC first, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And strictly because that's the one I found first.
Sorry, I got into Brandon's weed stash from last week, and I'm high as a kite right now.
Awesome.
Paul F. Tompkins, that was their guest. Again, very
Correct.
different than the live. The other episode, Talk About 2, was at SF Sketchfest. So it's in San Francisco. It's very live. It's kind of wild show. Obviously, Paul F. Tompkins. Now, I would normally say, are you familiar with Paul F. Tompkins? Except I know that one of our previous episodes, Comedy Bang Bang, I believe it was the 500th episode?
Correct.
Okay. So their anniversary 500th episode, or their landmark 500th, has a hell of a lot of guests. Among them, John Gabris, who we'll be discussing when we get to Talk About 2, and of course, Paul F. Tompkins. And I know you didn't love that particular display of both of their talents. Again, episode something early. What is it?
6?
5?
Six.
6?
5.
5, yeah. Episode 5, Comedy Bang Bang. If you want to hear Doug's hot takes on that beloved alt comedy super show. Doug, what did you think, first of all, of Doughboys? You've had 2 experiences now. Yeah. What did you think of the KFC episode? What did you think of Paul F. Tompkins? Talk to us.
And I would say also that I'm much more familiar with Paul F. Tompkins as an actor.
Okay.
And
Right.
And what are the things you know him from? Let's start with that.
Well, it's me and it's my memory, so I don't
Sure.
know. But I think we have discussed before the fact that I worked on a pilot with him once.
Right.
When I was doing, and unless I'm mistaken, it was that pilot about a family that goes back in time to live with cave people through some vortex in their backyard type of kind of reverse Encino Man.
Sure. That sounds awful, but
it did not
that
get
certainly
picked up,
could be funny.
But it did get
Well,
filmed.
Land of the Lost, didn't that have the same premise?
It did.
Basically.
It's unbelievably terrible, and it was on the morning for children. And I'm
Right.
assuming this was supposed to be like a
Yeah,
funny sitcom for adults.
And
yeah.
I think it was Paul on that one. If not, it was another pilot that I've done before.
Okay.
But I've seen him on other things as
You
well.
and Paul have rubbed elbows, is what you're saying. Well,
Yeah.
we get it. You and Paul
Very
are tight.
nice guy.
Do you
Very
think
nice.
Paul will eventually listen to this podcast and be like, no, that
Fingers
wasn't
crossed.
me?
Please
He's
let me
gonna
know, Paul.
come
Let me know.
at you hot.
And I'm okay with that. And
This
you know what
is-
I will say,
yes,
though? Just
Doug.
as a reminder, he left such a great impression on me that I do recall that I believe he was always in like pinstripe suits.
Then that was
He does
definitely
wear
Paul F.
suits.
Tompkins.
Yeah.
His sartorial style is well known and oft remarked on. He is only ever appears in suits.
But I don't know if it was that pilot. I've worked on so many pilots over the years that they
We
do
get
all
it. You're
jumbo.
cool.
I know.
Mr.
That is not what I'm
Whatever,
saying.
Dude, you
I
work
think-
in the industry.
Well,
You're
I
big
don't.
deal,
Flying
whatever,
planes.
As we've
bro.
just
You're
on
revealed.
pilots.
Got
As we
it.
just
Wow.
revealed, I am not in the industry.
All right, and I'm going to remind our listeners again on episode 15, I have asked Brandon repeatedly not to yell into his microphone, so I apologize if he just destroyed any of your audio equipment. Doug, talk to us about the KFC episode.
All right. Well, let's talk about. I want to throw a monkey wrench in this one this
All right.
week.
Are you going to ask us a question?
No, probably
No.
not.
Okay. Oh.
Maybe if I think of a decent question, I'll ask it. But I want to talk about the podcast as a whole.
Okay.
And then we can kind of dig into each particular episode because I do have thoughts on both.
Okay.
That,
spit them out, bro.
But